Hello everyone, this is Evan, and today guys I'm going to be doing a tournament report from the NAIC where I played Goldengo EX. I got 175th place out of 3,812 players. Yeah, so I'm going to just do a report for this tournament, and I guess the whole season, because this is now the end of the season. So I will say I am pretty disappointed in how this tournament and the season ended for me. Spoiler alert, I lost the win-in for top 64 and came up 15 points short of the World's Invite, which was very sad considering that I basically grinded the whole year to try and do the best I could at every tournament. Yeah, so I went to 6 majors, and yeah, I got 685 points, and the last person who got in the top 125 had 700. So kind of unfortunate there, but yeah, I'm just going to go over the list and the matchups and all of that. So here's the list that I played. I decided to just play a straightforward Goldengo list rather than the Goldengo Dragapult, just because it's more consistent, I think. The thing about the Dragapult build is that the Dracloaks, yes, they do give you extra draw support in the mid to late game. However, they don't actually really help you set up that much, so I just wanted to max out the consistency with this deck. And this build also doesn't really need the extra draw anyways, because with 4 ciphers, 3 gears, you're just trying to cipher every single turn for the exact cards you need. So yeah, you don't really need to draw a whole bunch of cards if you're just drawing the exact ones you want every turn. And yeah, also, without the Dracloaks, we still have room to play all the techs that we want to be playing. I decided to play a few noteworthy tech cards, the first of which is the Picnic Basket, which is very good against decks like Dragapult and Grimmsnarl. It can also be situationally good against Gardevoir, depending on how they spread their damage. So it kind of just gets all three of the, three of the 4 best decks. I'd say those 3 and Raging Bolt are like the top 4 right now. So this really just helps against 3 of those. So I think it's a card worth including in Goldengo. And then I played both of the tech stadiums that are pretty good in this deck. The Jamming Tower is mostly for the Gardevoir matchup. The matchup's definitely pretty bad without it. But if you do play it, then the matchup is probably slightly favored. And then the League HQ, which I played mostly for the Joltik matchup. I decided on this card last minute, and it helps a lot against the Joltik matchup, which is another matchup that if you don't tech for, it's unfavored. So yeah, if you have any more questions about the list, just let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you pretty soon. So now for the matchups. Round 1, I hit a Zorwerk, which was not a deck I was expecting to play this weekend. And this matchup is pretty close. I think it's unfavored if they play the Black Belt, but this list does not play Black Belt, so it's an okay matchup. Yeah, you just have to manage your energies well, make sure that you're not playing into a backdraft from the Darmanitan, and ideally you just knock out the Darmanitans every time they put them on the board. And that's exactly what I did game 1. I just kept chasing the Darmanitans, and yeah, if they don't have a Darmanitan down, they're not really doing anything, because using Night Joker to copy Virtuous Flame just feels bad. So that's what I did game 1, and then game 2, he Iono'd himself into a dead hand and just went like draw pass for multiple turns. So, yeah. So I started 1-0. Round 2, I hit a Joltik box, and this is another okay matchup. However, both games, my opponent prized both Pikachus, both games, which was incredibly unlucky for him. I think that's like a 0.1% chance or something, and both games, I know for a fact game 2, but I also think game 1, the Pikachus, both of them were the last 2 prizes, which is just so statistically unlikely. Yeah, I don't know if they like clumped together when he shuffled or what happened, but they were both prized both games, so he was having to use like the Iron Hands instead, which is just too slow in the matchup. So, yeah, so I just won. I was just able to win the prize trade. Round 3, I hit Tiger again, and if you've watched any of my tournament reports, you'll know that I have played against Tiger quite a few times this season. Um, I've been to 6 majors, and I hit Tiger at 3 of them, which is so um, so crazy to hit like the same person 50% of the time out of tournaments with like this amount of players. But we kind of had a good laugh about that one. And yeah, just kind of crazy that I hit him 3 times this season. He was playing Raging Bolt, which is kind of a slightly unfavored matchup for me. Game 1 I misplayed because I started Monkey and my hand was pretty bad, but I forgot to attach an energy to the Monkey, so he got like the Baby Bolt attack and sniped a Gimme Goal. And if I had attached energy, I could have just retreated into a Goldango, and if I coin bonus into an out for more Gimme Goals, like a Puffin, or even just 1 Gimme Goal, as well as eSearch Pro, or an out to that, then I could win the game, since I think I had Counter Catcher in hand. So it was unlikely I would win even if I didn't misplay, but if I had made the correct play, then I still would have had a chance to win. So yeah, I guess that one's on me. And then game 2, I had a really weird situation where game 2 I opted first, which I think it is better for me to go first in this matchup, just because I want to have the extra turn to set up. However, my hand was pretty awful. I had no basics, just the Gimme Goal, so I put the League HQ in play, which I had in my hand. I just put that down and passed, and just hoped my opponent could not donk me. And he had everything for the donk, except for the stadium, so he ended up just having to use Burst Roar instead. And I'm still in a weird spot. I have Arven plus Goldango in my hand, but those are the only 2 playable cards. I top deck something else that's unplayable, and I go ahead and use Arven for eSearch Pro just to thin all those energies out, and I also grab like TM Evo as well, just to thin the deck. And then I coin bonused and whiffed, so I just had to knock out the Bolt and hope that he could not find the donk, and he did. So whether that was a misplay or not is debatable. If I had coin bonused before getting Arven or before using Arven for the eSearch Pro, then I could have potentially drawn the eSearch Pro off the coin bonus and just Arven for Puffin instead. However, there were also those all those energies in the deck that I could have drawn into, which would have been bad. So I feel like thinning the eSearch Pro was statistically the better play there. However, he did tell me after the match that he almost certainly would have whiffed the attack if I had just gone Arven for Puffin plus Team Evo. And I didn't realize that at the time because his hand was so big. I just assumed that he had all the pieces in his hand, since he had like at least 8 cards, I think. However, I also, now that I think about it, I don't remember if I had an energy in hand, so that might have not been an option. But either way, kind of a scuffed set. I definitely could have played better, I think. Round 4, I hit Hassan. Pretty good player. He's top 8'd a regional this season, I'm pretty sure. And it was Flareon. This matchup's basically unwinnable. Because they just take the first 1 prize, and then they can just take 2 every turn, and then win the game with Briar. So, I think he might have, like, when he was shuffling, he might have showed me a Flareon or something by accident. I don't quite remember, but I knew that before the match started, I somehow knew that it was Flareon. So I opted first, because in this matchup, basically the only way I can really win is if I can get the turn 2 1 prize Goldango attack on a 1 prize Pokemon, and then they either whiff the turn 2 Boss plus Fan Rotom with a 1 prize board state, or they have to bench a 2 prizer, and I'm able to go Boss, knock that out with a Goldango the next turn. So very unlikely no matter what, but both games I had the 1 prize Goldango attack lined up in my hand, and then he Iono'd me turn 1, and I whiffed both times. So I don't think I could have done anything different in this matchup. I think the matchup's just awful. So I'm 2-2 at this point. Round 5, I hit Vanessa. She just said, hey, I don't want to play in the tournament anymore. I'll give you the win. Good luck on the rest. So, very nice of her to do that. Looks like it was Joltik Box. So I'm 3-2 at this point. Round 6, I hit Alex Szymanski, very, very well-known player. He's like top-aided a ton of regionals at this point, and won EUIC a couple years ago as well. So definitely a top-level player. And I feel like a lot of players, when they see they're up against someone of the skill level of a player like Alex Szymanski, they would kind of get intimidated and maybe be so nervous that they would make a misplay or something. However, I was just focused on winning against... I was just focused on more so playing against the deck rather than the player playing it, which, yeah, that's kind of just how I approach those types of situations. Just focus on beating, focus on beating the deck, like just winning the game at hand rather than your opponent's accomplishments, because that'll only like make you nervous and make you misplay and stuff. So I ended up winning. Game 1, he won the flip and opted second. I had an okay setup, nothing great, but it wasn't unplayable. And then he goes draw, attached to monkey, pass. And I just had Goldango, and then I think an out to eSearch Pro, so I just donked the monkey. And then game 2, he opted second again. I don't think I had the best setup game 2, unfortunately. And he won. It was a pretty close one, but I do recall him winning. And then game 3 was another close one. So he had, like, at some point in the game, he had a play where going for the Charmed Drifloon was very obviously the correct play. And then he used Artisan and just failed it. So at this point, I was like, okay, I know for sure, or at least I'm almost certain that the Drifloon is prized. So he started having to use, like, Monkey Dory attacks. And at one point, I did have to flip for it, and I flipped heads. So I was, I was still able to knock that out. But the other times, like, I think he used Monkey, like, twice more. And I was able to, like, switch or retreat or Turo or something both times. And it was very close. His last 2 prizes were Drifloon and Screamtail. So... kind of unfortunate there, but I ended up winning. So yeah, 4-2 now. Round 7, I hit 1, playing the Raging Bolt deck. Not exactly the matchup I wanted to see, because this matchup I don't think is very good. So game 1, I had a very good hand. I'm pretty sure that I had, like, almost everything I could ask for in my hand. But he goes Judge Fanrodom attack, and I kind of got a pretty bad hand off the Judge. And I ended up getting 3 prizes behind because he just took 3 one-prize knockouts. So normally, this situation would look very bad for me. Like, it would look unwinnable, because in this matchup, whoever takes the first 2 prizes almost always wins. However, I'm 3 prizes behind, and his hand is very small at this point. So I decided to play it out and just see what happens. Because in this matchup, sometimes you can knock out Ogerpon, Bolt, or Fez, whichever one harms their setup the most, and sometimes they'll just whiff the attack. It doesn't happen that often. Usually this deck is pretty good at chaining attacks, but occasionally you can knock out one of those 3, and their hand is just a bunch of unplayable cards, because the thing about the Bolt deck is it's not as turbo as it once was, so you're playing like a bunch of cards like the extra Pokemon, extra stadiums, even energies and stuff that can just kind of clog up your hand, so it's possible for them to whiff. And that's what happened. I was able to countercatcher, knock out the Ogerpon, go down to 4 prizes, he still has 3, and just as I had predicted, his hand didn't have anything great in it, so he ended up just like playing some cards and then using Burst Roar, and I knocked out the Bolt, and at this point I am now winning the prize trade again. So yeah, so that's kind of something important to know. Some players in that situation would just be like, oh, alright, I'm behind, I'm just going to go ahead and scoop, save enough time for the next 2 matches. And it's good to know when to scoop, just to save more time. However, there are some situations where if you can play for like 1 more turn, just to see if you can potentially get lucky, it can definitely be better. And I think this was one of those situations, and sticking around for 1 more turn definitely paid off here. And then game 2, my opponent gets the same Judge plus Fan Rotom play, except this time, he basically judged me into the exact hand I needed. Like, basically, the perfect cards. Like, I found Goldango, Cypher, and then Nest Ball for Fez. So then I was able to just, like, Fez, draw some cards, Cypher for E-Search Pro, Countercatcher, and then Goldango, and do all of that. And it was basically just GG's from there. So I definitely just drew pretty well game 2. So I was able to beat Raging Bolt. So at this point, I am 5-2. So I need to, this next one's going to be a win and end for me, because if I win, I can just offer the ID. I know that a lot of people will not ID round 9, because that, if you go in at 6-2-1 into day 2, then you can no longer make top cut. However, at this point, I was okay with not being able to make top cut. I was just going to take the tie because I needed safe points for the invite. But round 8, I hit a Raging Bolt, and yeah, game 1, my opponent got ahead because I started Fez. I feel like I started Fez a lot this weekend, actually, particularly in day 2. Like, I started Fez more than I didn't in day 2, I think. But I started Fez, he knocked it out with the Raging Bolt, and he's ahead. I was able to knock out, I think, an Ogerpon or a Fez or something, and he actually whiffed the attack, so I ended up taking another 2, and I'm ahead again, which is basically the same thing that happened the last round against Bolt. And in game 2, I think he just drew everything he needed whenever he needed it, and I lost. And in game 3, I was in a pretty good position, but then once we get to turns, he just pushes a 1-prizer and just passes, and I actually whiffed the knockout. I could have, if I could find, like, Boss plus SCR or something, or, like, double SCR or SCR plus Energy, I don't really remember, but I needed to find something and I whiffed. So I ended up just passing again, and he basically goes, like, draw pass again. And at this point, I have Boss already, and I think I have an Energy. I just need to find SER, and then my Goldango whiffs. So I ended up having to just, yeah, I ended up losing that. Or, no, we ended up tying, because if I can't win that turn, then it's a tie. So, kind of unfortunate to whiff so hard there, but I think I did all I could that game. Just the draws weren't exactly the best. So, 5-2-1 at this point. Round 9, I hit a Flareon. When my opponent flipped over an Eevee, I was so sad because, like I said earlier, this matchup is close to unwinnable. However, if we look at the list, there is no Briar in here, which, yeah, if there's no Briar, the matchup is definitely fine. Briar is just what makes the matchup so awful. However, game 1, he, like, took the first 1-prize knockout, and I just traded 2 for 2, and I just had to hope he whiffed Briar, and he did not find it. And then game 2, basically the same thing happened. So I was like, either I just got incredibly lucky and won by some miracle, he whiffed Briar both games, or he just doesn't play it. And it turns out he doesn't play it. So definitely kind of lucky for me there to be able to beat possibly my worst matchup. Yeah, so luckily he did not play the Briar. So I'm 6-2-1 into day 2. I am not able to make top cut, but if I win enough games, I can still get potentially top 64 and maybe get my invite. Round 10, I hit Nick Muffet. Kind of a rematch because I played him at Louisville earlier in the season, and this time around he was playing Grimmsnarl, which I think is an okay matchup for me. Game 1, I started Fez, and it was very close. I didn't have the best draws in game 1. I think I had, like, a few turns where I whiffed what I needed, but he ended up winning just barely. Otherwise, I was going to win the next turn. And then game 2, I had to put, like, a lot of Goldangos in play, because normally I don't want to put so many Goldangos in play because that can play into TM Devo. However, I had, like, E-Search Pro and Picnic Basket prized, so I needed to draw cards just to actually find what I needed to be able to win fast enough. And that's the thing. Like, sometimes you're like, another kind of important thing to learn is sometimes you have to take risks in order to come back from a losing position. So this is just one of those times where I had to go for a setup that normally I would not want to go for. However, I needed to take a risk because I have a poor setup, or at least I have poor prizes. So I need to be able to go for some different lines of play to be able to win. And I did end up winning that one. And then there was no time for game 3, so we tied. But yeah, definitely well played. He did mention he made like a little bit of a misplay in game 1, or maybe it was game 2 actually. He made like a slight misplay, he mentioned. But yeah, definitely a fun set. Nick Muffet is also another top player. He's like top 8 at a lot of regionals and stuff. So always cool to be able to play against like these players who have kind of made like a name for themselves, just because they're so experienced with the game that it's always like a good learning experience to be able to play against them. So yeah, I tied to Nick Muffet. Round 11, I hit Joe. He was playing Joltik Box, which I think is a pretty okay matchup. Game 1, he had a kind of a bad hand, and I actually just ended up going for like a Baby Goldango attack on the Joltik, just to take it off of the board. That was the only way I could actually get an attack that turn. I couldn't take like a 2-prize knockout, and I decided that Baby Goldango was optimal just because it wouldn't harm the rest of my setup, because I already had like 3 Gimmigholes on my bench, and I had like Goldango plus Cypher in hand, I'm pretty sure. So it wasn't going to harm the rest of my setup, but it takes the Joltik off the board, so he can't, or at least he'd have to get another one down to use later. So, yeah, and then he kind of just didn't exactly draw what he needed game 1, so I won. And then game 2, he drew well game 2, and had a point where he could win if he just had Crispin onto the Pikachus, and he had like a 12-card hand, so I just had to take a knockout and hope he didn't have it. And somehow he did not have the pieces he needed in the hand. So he ended up just going for like Iron Leaves plus Iono and swinging it into my Goldango. And then I was able to find what I needed to knock out the Iron Leaves. So got kind of lucky there in game 2. But yeah, I think the matchup is pretty good. Round 12, I hit Curtis. Yeah, this was a Goldango Mirror. And this is where I for sure, once I started seeing how I was drawing, I thought for sure the tournament was over for me, and my season was over, because game 1, I took 3 mulligans, started Fez, and then searched my deck with Puffin, and I was like, okay, there's 1 Gimmighoul in here, the other 3 are prized, and I scooped immediately, just to save as much time as possible. And then game 2, well, I guess I should say, if you didn't know, in the Goldango Mirror, whoever puts their Goldango down first almost always loses, because you essentially have to take a knockout with a 1-prize Pokemon to win the matchup. Because if you just put a 2-prizer down and take a 1-prize card, then they just take 2 every turn and they win. However, in my case, I went Draw Pass with a Gimmighoul, and then the next turn, the only way I can avoid getting donked, other than just passing again, is I have Goldango plus Cypher in hand. So I had to go for the Goldango Cypher to actually be able to play the game. And I took a 1-prize knockout, and somehow he managed to whiff the knockout on the Goldango EX. If he found it, then my tournament was just over immediately, which would have been very bad because, you know, like, both of those games would have pretty much just been out of my control. Like, nothing I could have done. Just the draws were so atrocious. But he whiffed, and I was able to take another knockout, and I won the prize trade. And then game 3, my hand was very good game 3. And I was able to just eventually take the 1-prize knockout with my Baby Goldango. I think he either prized Psychic or Fire, so he was never able to actually get the Dracloak charged up. So, yeah, so I just took a knockout with the 1-prize Goldango, There was actually a point where I misplayed because I had used Cypher to stack my 2 cards, and those 2 cards, if he did just take a knockout with the 2 prize Goldango, then I would have had a dead hand because of my misplay. I stacked like Baby Goldango on top instead of Ultra Ball. But obviously, it was given the information he had, it was definitely correct to not go for that play because my hand was so big. But if he had, I think he would have won. But I think he made the right decision by not. So yeah, I ended up winning the Goldango Mirror, and this next round is a win-and-in for $2,000 plus my Worlds invite. I hit Jack Moore, another top player, playing Gardevoir. And game 1, I had a very good setup with like 4 Goldangos by turn 2, which was incredibly good. But then past that point, I wasn't really able to draw what I needed exactly. Well, it wasn't even that I drew bad, it was just that don't get me wrong, he played very well, but like he drew basically whatever he needed whenever he needed it. So he was just able to always attack with whatever attacker was optimal, and yeah, I just was not able to really win. He just set up a checkmate where he had like 3 monkeys, or no, he had like such a big hand and I couldn't disrupt it because my deck plays no disruption. So he's either guaranteed to get the 3rd monkey down or Drifloon Charm. So I was just basically cooked there. Yeah, so he basically just had options for everything towards the end. Game 2, I kind of made another misplay at some point where he had used Mind Bend, and I could have used Cypher to get out of the confusion, but I ended up, for some reason, I used Arven. I think it would have given me like a better setup or something, so I just tried to go for the better setup, but I ended up having to like manual retreat into my other Goldango, and I whiffed the card I needed. I don't remember what I needed, but I needed something to be able to knock out. It might have been like eSearch Pro or like a Vessel or something, but I ended up just whiffing what I needed. Actually, I think I just needed to draw 1 energy, and I had like multiple energies in my deck. So I ended up whiffing, but still, like game 2 was basically the same thing. He just drew super well, like got the double Guardy down, and just set up a checkmate. So yeah, that's where my tournament ended. Pretty disappointed overall in how it went. I mean, I'm not complaining about the day 2, of course. This is the first year I've actually done well at NAIC. It's like my 3rd year going. In both years I was in seniors, I did not do well. So I'm happy to have finally been able to break that curse and make it into day 2. However, I am kind of disappointed to have gotten so close to the invite and yet so far. But next season, I'm gonna do everything I can next season to be able to improve. And yeah, hopefully I'll get there. Anyways, let me know in the comments how you did if you went. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.